So as Ivan told you, I'm working as a business analyst at King ICT. And since you just came back from lunch, I'm probably also the only thing standing between you and some happy thoughts about the next coffee break. So it's probably wise and fair that I give you a reason you should be sitting here for the next 25 or so minutes. I'll try to be briefer than that. Okay, so I'm here to talk about BPMN. How many of you have heard of or maybe using BPMN? Hands higher. Whoa, great. Excellent. So my goal here is to speak to you how BPMN can and should be a common language between, or if you want, a bridge between two sides of the most well-known gap in enterprise software development. So on one side of this gap are the business people, the ones who give us jobs or the ones who have a pain point that they try to resolve with some kind of a software provided by the guys on the other side of the bridge. Those are the IT guys, or us, let's say. Usually business analysts are considered as the guys who just run around from one side to the other trying to act as Google Translate, but that's not true, of course. Okay, so why is there a bridge? So if they are both sides are working towards the same goal, some software product that will resolve some business issue, how come that they don't understand each other? Their perspective is different. They work from different areas, and somehow they think differently, and then they use a different language as well. So BPMN is supposed to be the magical wand that you're just supposed to wave around and somehow resolve this Tower of Babel confusion that somehow arises in every software development project. Okay, so BPMN, what is it? It's a short abbreviation for Business Process Model and Notation, as you probably know. And it's actually a 500-page specification or a standard provided by the OMG group. It's not the oh my god, but the Object Management Model group, which is also responsible for the UML specification. So their goal was to provide a standard. It's actually an ISO standard, as Ivan mentioned, which will provide you with a way of defining process models in a unique way that could be understood by everyone on each side of the bridge and by all sides involved in the project, in the software project. Okay. So the another strength of this is that BPMN provides you with a way to perform or to have executable code derived from the model itself. So you are just supposed to draw a picture, then click export, you get an XML file, and you just feed with it the workflow engine, and you get a software. So no developers needed, you get a zero-code system. But before we get into a discussion whether this is possible or when it is possible, let's go back to the first point of the definition or the acronym of the BPMN. That's the business process. So every business, of course, has to have a process. It's a set of tasks that lead to some product of a value. So you have it whether you work in a mechanical shop or you are, I don't know, a writer of books. There are many boring definitions of business process, but the one I like is that it's everything we do which provides someone who cares with something that they expect to receive. For example, if I go to a hairdresser, I would be happy if I receive an ice cream, but that's not the main purpose I went there. So I expect to receive a haircut. Okay, so all of our software projects usually begin by someone like this coming and saying, okay, this is my business. Please analyze it, and I want to make more money with it. So throw some fancy IT stuff on it and make it happen. So what we usually do is we try to figure out what this business actually is, find all the rules behind it, find the process behind it, and then figure out a way that is the as-is, we like to call it, state, and figure out a way how to improve it. So to go to a desired process state. Okay, so what are the current ways we use for defining process models? One way is to bury it in some sort of a use case specification. That's probably the most common way familiar to all business analysts here. I think there are some. Okay, what is the minus this approach? Well, first of all, it's textual, so it's kind of boring. Nobody actually reads it carefully, and even if they do, I mean, you will not understand it in the exact same way that I do. So it's really dangerous and not even possible to translate it into code one-on-one, right? So without losing some stuff in interpretation. Okay. Another way is by going straight into the code. So just putting all the business logic inside, and the only person who can understand it, find it, and maybe change it is the developer who wrote it, maybe in the same week that he did it. After a couple of weeks or even months, I don't think that they will be they will be able to remember where the stuff is, and that they will be exactly sure what effects it might have to change a single line of code. So this is not really a good approach. What is also not good is that it is not standardized. So if you have one development team and another one, you give them a process, they will probably come up with different lines of code, right? Because they have different approaches. Okay, a third way is by creating some sort of flowcharts. And besides providing with a nice graphical image that you can maybe put into the formal specification, there's not much you can do with it. So it's a pretty picture, it's not standardized. Each of these symbols can mean a different thing to a different person who wrote it. And the other issue with this is that it is not really understandable. It doesn't provide you with much information. You have something, it may provide you with some basic understanding, but you still need a lot of explanation, a lot of iteration steps to gain understanding, even if you are a business analyst talking to the end user, or if you are a business analyst talking to the developer. Okay, so as you might guess, BPMN is the magical solution to this problem. Okay, but let's talk first more about the business processes. If you ask any business process owner or a business user, what does he want of his processes? How should they be? He will tell you, okay, I want them to be effective. I want them to be fast. I want to get to the end result as soon as possible. He wants them to be visible so that in every step of the process, everyone knows where they are, what are their next responsibilities. And they should be transparent. Also, the main issue is that they should be agile, which means they should adapt to the changes fast. Because in today's world, if you don't adapt to the changes fast, your businesses will just die. Okay, then we go to business process management, because obviously you need to constantly improve your business processes, which means you need to manage them. The BPM is actually, there was a whole hype and it's still going around for the past 20 or 30 years. There were a lot of books written on this subject, a lot of vendors made a lot of money on it, but this will not be the focus of today's talk. But management, maybe we should discuss a little bit more about that. To be able to manage something, whether those are people or the resources that we like to call them, whether it's, I don't know, stuff you have in your refrigerator. You need to know them, know every detail of them, to be able to spot the weak stuff, and to be able to know where to improve them. Okay, so you need to know your way around those processes, for example. It's the same thing. So when you're going to the mountains, for example, it's never really wise to go without a compass or a map. So it will help you to establish where you are and where you're heading. It's the same thing with business processes. The best way to do it is to model them. Models are our interpretation of reality, so they are inherently wrong, but they are nevertheless useful. They are our best way to help us understand what goes on in the world or in the business processes and help them improve them. Okay, and then we go back to the last part of the acronym behind BPMN. That's the notation. Notation is a set of symbols that provide some meaning, the same meaning to everyone. For example, if you take a look at this photo, I'm sure that every musician in the world will know what this means in the same way. Nobody in Asia will interpret this differently than in, I don't know, UK, for example. Okay, that's the exact thing that BPMN does in terms of business processes. So it provides you in a formal way with a method to define, uniquely define in a standardized way, everything behind the business process. Okay. So it provides you with a way to have correct business models, the ones that actually do the best in trying to mimic the real stuff that goes on in the world. You also have clarity with them. Everyone, even the ones who see this model or picture for the first time, will be able to grasp the meaning behind it, which is very important. They are also complete, so they encompass the process from end to end. And they are consistent, meaning that a group of modelers, given the same set of facts about the process, should more or less define the same model. Use the same symbols, arrange them in the same way, So it really provides consistency. Okay. They are also standardized. This is important because then you are able to have models that are readily understandable, and you are able to create something that is called executable model, which we'll discuss a bit later. This was a bit worrying to me because I mentioned that BPMN is a 500-page specification. That's not something that sounds readily understandable, right? Okay, how can that be? How can we expect that? Another strong point of BPMN is that it provides different modeling levels or supports different modeling levels. For example, try and picturing yourself explaining to this little guy that he shouldn't put his fingers in electrical socket. Okay, now let's go back to this guy. Try and explain to him what is the importance of the next feature you want to implement for him. You'll use a different set of words, right? Different sentences. Although some would say that these two guys are a bit similar at some points. But okay. So in terms of BPMN, we differentiate between strategic and operational model, and we use them in different levels and for different purposes and in different project phases. Okay, so for strategic models, they provide a general overview of the process. For them, you will use just the simplest basic elements of BPMN that are mostly similar to the ones we find in the workflow, in the flowchart, sorry. Those are these elements. And then if you want to go to the operational level, which is more detailed, encompasses larger number of the specifics of the process, some specific stuff, you will reach out for the full stack of BPMN, so-called. Okay, and the next level after the operational model is the executable phase. That's actually still, in the past few years, a lot of vendors have been trying to figure out ways to do this in an easy way, to just, as I mentioned, right-click, export, and feed to workflow engine. But the main value in this is that those models are interchangeable. So if I work in a company that uses some tool to create BPMN models, I can export them, and another person can import them into another vendor tool and use it again. Okay, if we take a look at process analysis in general, there are three roles that we should differentiate between. Those are process participant, process analyst, and process engineer. In terms of software development, we might call it, I don't know, business owner, business analyst, and the developer. Okay, they all have different perspectives. So process participant, what is he interested in? He just sees his tasks, right? And he sees what he's responsible for and what's the next thing he needs to do. The process analyst is usually interested in the whole thing, the process from end to end, and with the whole integration between maybe some tasks performed by the user and some tasks that are service tasks. And the process engineer or developer, he's mainly interested in how to implement this within some software. Okay, let's go back to the strategical level and discuss more about that. Strategic level usually is done between process participant and process analyst. You usually do it in beginning phase of a project. So you want to check out what the basic process really is, make a basic grasp out of it, get a common understanding with the user, and then use again the strategic level to define a desired state, again with not too detailed, just to have a basic understanding and an approval from the end user. Okay. The main principle you should follow is this one. So don't make me think. Don't go into too much details. There's a wonderful book written by Steve Krug about usability with the same title. So strategic models should basically fit on an A4 sheet of paper. You should use like 4 or 5, 8 symbols. That's it. They shouldn't be too wide. They shouldn't encompass every exception. Nothing like that. Okay, so your job is to get a, let's say, bird's eye perspective of the process, right? Okay, best way to do it is probably have a workshop with some key users. But the problem there is you get them all in the same room and they all have something like this. So they look at the process from their perspective. They see their tasks, their responsibilities. They don't really care about what the other department does unless they are involved in some political discussion or some fights among them. This can be a problem. So your job as a business analyst is to find a way to get them back to this. Okay. they usually act like frogs, as I told you. So probably at some point you will ask one question and how do you do this? And he will say, yeah, I do that. And then another one will say, and then my job is to do that. And then they will start maybe a bit quarrel. Yeah, but when I do this, you do that. And your job is to minimize this croaking of the frogs. So to get them back to this perspective and to put everything on a higher level and explain, okay, this is just, let's get the grasp of the basic process. Okay, let's take a look at an example of hiring a new employee in a firm. So what you would want to do on the first meeting is say, okay, this is the process pool or the process boundaries that I'm about to explore. We call it, so the process pool, its name is hire a new employee. So the name of the process. You want to establish then the roles. Basic roles are the business department, where you have a vacancy or an open spot, and the HR department, who will probably do the selection of the candidate and the recruitment process. Okay. The business process begins with an event. Somebody maybe left the company, or I don't know, we got a new project and we need a new developer, for example. Okay, the business department will then say, okay, I want this person to have these and these, I don't know, qualities, and it will send this to the HR department. They will somehow access it, advertise it on some portals. They will assess the applications received. So, okay, now is the time probably in a workshop that you will receive you will get a lot of questions. Okay, how do you assess a vacancy? Okay, you probably, I don't know, see if the description is complete. If not, what happens? You will probably go back here and here. How do you advertise it? And how is exactly this task followed by this one? You should wait for some application. What if not a single one comes or something like that? But these are all the details that should be analyzed later. So you are just focused on the main stuff here. Okay. Then after the application, you interview some candidates, offer them a job, and the job is finished after the contract is signed. Okay. So this is maybe the result of the first workshop that you will have with the users. Okay. So you get the basic set of tasks. There are no more than 1, 2, 3, 4, less than 10. Okay. And this is what you end up with. You go back to your office, and then the headache starts. Okay. This is another model that you are about to create, and this is the end result of the strategic analysis. So this is something that even the ones who didn't raise their hands probably understand, because it's really, I don't know, it looks like a child's drawing, right? Okay. The next level here, you will use this after another set of workshops and defining all the details, and you will end up with something like this. So you see these events here, they are a bit more defined. Also, the tasks behind them, and some of the processes that we mentioned that are a bit more complicated are now, you see this plus sign, they are defined as sub-processes. Because, for example, advertising a vacancy, there's a sub-process behind it. So you need to write the advertisement, contact the advertising agency, send the advertisement there, and make sure that it is published. Okay. You see this loop behind the applications assessment, which means that there are a lot of applications that are coming to you, and you need to analyze each one of them. Okay. There are also some indications of messages that are going on in the process. For example, you will receive a message of an application. After you finish with this looping task, you will end up with a list of shortlisted candidates, so the ones that are the best fit. You also see that here we had the interview candidates just as an HR department task. Of course, after further analysis, you establish that it's not really the HR department alone who does this. It's actually some kind of a combination of HR plus probably the manager from the department, from the business department that will work with this guy. Okay, so this is the strategic model that will be clear to every business user after you do this basic explanation that I did for you. And this is maybe where a lot of BPMN use stop. Okay, and that is fine. Okay, maybe there are some projects where you don't need to go any further than this, and it's okay, because you can use this again as a good basis to put it, okay, again in the functional specification, but it provides you with a fast and quick way to get an approval from the customer. Okay, that this is it. He will not have to read through 50 pages of a document where you explain every single stuff. Okay, and for the developers, it's easier for them to understand the picture. Nobody will read your sentences. Okay. Another level is the operational one. Okay, so that's step 2 in the BPMN, and usually all 3 roles are involved. We include here the process engineer, so the development team, that should really think about where to put software behind this process, where it is a good idea to do it. Okay, he does this together with the process analyst, or I don't know, product owner or a business analyst in our case. The process participant is really important because in operational level, you think in the terms of participant view. So you will want to separate the process that we just discussed for each role. So if I'm somebody from the business department who wants to hire a new guy, my process starts with me wanting a guy and ends with me getting a new guy. Okay. If I'm someone from the HR department, my process will start with getting the notification, hey, I need somebody for this position, and will end when I send you the list of shortlisted candidates. Okay. Okay. So we take a look at this picture. We see some sub processes, right? Okay. When we first do the operational level, we go back to the tasks, but you don't see any pluses here, right? But you define the type of it. So this is a user task. This one will be service tasks. So it's an indication that you might use some software for it. You also add these data marks. So on places where you expect to have software integration with something. Okay. So this is the first level. And if we take a look at, we also define some, let's say, alternative flows in the process. If we take a look at now the perspective of a business unit manager that I just mentioned, so as I told you, his process starts here, and he identifies that he wants a new guy, okay? And if you see after he does here is what I need from this guy to do, there's an event-based gateway. So he waits for something to happen. Either the HR department will tell him, okay, I do not approve, you are not allowed to hire someone, okay, and then the process is closed. He either can say, okay, this vacancy is approved, go on, and he will just wait for a job description to be written, or he will get from the HR department a flag, hey, your description is crap, please write some new one. Okay, so it goes on in the process like this. From the HR team's department, you have a similar perspective. So again, you have a process from end to end. This is important because then you can really see the entire picture of the process and see how it relates to other roles in the process. Okay. So these models can be executed in a workflow engine. How? There are many free tools that offer you the possibility to simply see the XML interpretation behind this model. There are also, depending on how powerful they are, you might be asked to or required to write some further XML definitions for this model, and just then feed it to the workflow engine and use it as is. There are also a lot of free tools that allow the business users to, I don't know, for example, here you will have to specify a vacancy, for example. You will use probably some web form for it. A lot of free tools provide you with a way to click, just drag and drop forms and do it without developers, let's say. Okay. Okay. So executable models, as I said, sometimes require a further analysis from the process analyst and the process engineer, where they have to define a bit more about the whole model. But the whole purpose is to get the, let's so-called, zero code system. Is it really possible? There are a lot of debates around this, but I think probably the main answer is it depends. So you will just choose from case to case where it makes sense. Probably the best answer, or closest one to truth, is that you will probably, if you have a really complex project, you can identify some parts of the project or process which are simple and which contains mostly user tasks, not so many service integrations or something like that. And you will say, okay, this is really easy for the user to be responsible for this part of the process, and he can change this using some BPM system. He can click on, okay, I want this process, this task to go before this one, extract it to XML, feed it into the process workflow. But the whole complex logic around this should be, and is on most projects, again, implemented, I don't know, using Java or .NET. Okay, another issue here is really the responsibility. So our business users, although they usually complain about developers or the costs of IT, they are not really willing to give this responsibility back to the IT and say, okay, to take this responsibility from the IT and say, okay, I will decide by myself and be responsible for this. They like someone to point the finger to when stuff go wrong. Okay, but what is then the use, let's say, to conclude, what is the main takeaway from the PMN? Is that you can really get process definition in a fast and correct way, which can serve to gain a mutual understanding between you as a business analyst, the process owner, the business owner, and the development team, which really leads to shorter decision time in projects, to less lengthy documentation, and really speeding up the process of, I don't know, getting approval for implementing functionalities. Important thing is that you should know your level, know when to use which level of modeling in BPMN, and that a good BPMN, because there are bad BPMN users out there, is really, as everything in life, done with a lot of exercise. So you need to do it a lot and be prepared to make errors. Okay, I really would like to thank you and get you back to thinking about the coffee break.